Clearly, I haven't had enough of controversial top 10s on the channel because here we are today with another one where we talk about some Skylanders that a lot of people seem to place some hatred upon, which is entirely unjust. And I want you to know that these lists are solely based on my opinion. I don't want you guys to change your opinions based on my list. I'm hoping that you can play these characters for yourselves and gain a further understanding. That's the hope, the inspiration behind this here top 10. But still, you should stick to your own opinions because they're unique to you, they're based on your own life's experiences, and so because of that, it's something worth treasuring, no matter what people have to say about it. But sorry about that cut right there, I can't be asked to record this intro, so we're just going to continue after having made said cut to elaborate further on what I said earlier when I said lists, because whilst there are some Skylanders that are incredibly overhated, and I'll go as far to say that they are underrated characters, there are some on the opposite end of that spectrum that seem to be loved by several fans undeservingly. They are what we call the overrated pieces of garbage. Well, not necessarily garbage, because some characters on my overrated list are very good characters. I just so happen to think that they get a lot more love than they are deserving of, and so naturally that's why they've wound up on said list, which is exactly the one that we're going to be starting with once the intro is said and done with, mind you. Coming in at number 10, we have Terrafin. Okay, please lower your pitchforks. I understand why this upsets a lot of you, because credit where credit is due. Terrafin being a shark that punches enemies is a really cool concept, and it definitely has some really sweet animations and combinations, so it goes without saying I understand why so many people love this guy. But with that being said, I still think he gets more praise than he deserves, especially when it comes to the pacing of this character. Boy, it takes forever to start and stop a belly flop, and the fact that if you're hit during the entire slow animation, you have to do it all over again, and of course you take the damage as well in the process. So for the lack of speed you have when playing this guy just makes him rather boring to me. And he's a shark that punches. You know, it's a cool concept, but it's not exactly the most creative thing we've seen out of Skylander yet. So again, I definitely understand and love him for praise, which is why Terrafin's only at number 10 right here, because I can understand why he's loved so much. But with it being said and done, I don't think he needs to be as loved as he is, therefore making him rather overrated and worthy of being number 10 on the overrated list right here. Coming in at number 9, we have who is, in my opinion, the most overrated sensei, and that is Boom Bloom. Also just so happening to be one of the least most talked about sensei supposedly, so I suppose that's why she's number 9 on the list, since she is spoken about very little, so I can't really call her all of that overrated. But when she is talked about, I seem to find that nobody can flaw her in any manner whatsoever, despite the fact that she is a flawed character, and that alone makes her overrated to me. The fact that she seems to be universally beloved for no reason whatsoever, because her attacks are kind of generic. Sure, they flow together quite well and are really fun combinations to pull off, but fun for a sensei isn't merely good, but good enough, since most senseis, especially in comparison to Boom Bloom, are incredibly overpowered. So because of that, Boom Bloom just having the average uninspired moveset as well as attacks that don't really deal all that much damage is ultimately what makes her such a disappointment in comparison to other senseis, and definitely not worthy of being included amongst the ranks of the very best of them, unlike some people the few times they talk about her seem to place her at. And this, of course, overhyping of the character is what makes her overrated in my eyes. That puts her at number 9, but again, she's not getting any lower than that, considering the lack of talk I hear surrounding her. Okay, if you guys didn't want to burn me for putting Terrafin on the list, you most certainly are going to want to burn me for putting Flipwreck on the list, who's now not only made the overrated list, but he also made the disappointing list as well. And the main reason why he was so disappointing to me is because he was so overhyped by everyone telling me how much of a good character he is, and he just simply is not as good as people make him out to be. His third attack, for the most part, is a much worse version of Chop Chop with a projectile attack that has barely any distance or damage. His melee attacks are too slow, not really all that fun to utilise, and really slow down the pacing of the character, and overall make him really ineffective in combat. So you might have fun with this character for about the 5 seconds you remain alive with him, because he doesn't really last that much more longer in combat due to the fact that he dies so easily because of said lack of efficiency in his moveset, and that ultimately in and of itself is highly disappointing and makes the character rather overrated if you were to ask me. Coming in at number 7, we have Wallop, a character which is basically the Drobot of melee characters, and whilst that alone is a pretty cool concept, unfortunately what I find highly overrated about Wallop is anyone who turns around and says to me that his design is incredible, when in fact it most certainly is not. It's fun to get up close and personal with your enemies and just hold a single attack button and absolutely annihilate everything in your path, but that's about where the fun begins and ends with Wallop. Plus his moveset is highly uninspired. Every single one of his moves revolves around hammers, which, there's Skylanders with bigger, more grander hammers than Triclops anyway. They're such a generic style Traptanium weapon of his, to where he doesn't really stand out on a design nor visual standpoint, and the only fun I can have with him really is for absolute annihilation with his melee attacks, and that's about it. So why is he so praised and considered one of the best Trapmasters from combat, perhaps, but in any other category, not so much? So anyone who tells me that Wallop is one of their favourite Trapmasters, every time I am gobsmacked even by the idea that Wallop could be better than classics like Wildfire, Crypt King or Nightlight, because he just simply isn't, in my opinion. That's the key phrase right there, in my opinion. Please respect it, and if you do so, I will be respecting your opinions in the comment section below when you tell me how wrong I am with putting Wallop on the list. But as it stands, Wallop is getting number 7 for the most overrated Skylander of all time. Coming in at number 6 is Nightmare, facing the same problems as Boom Bloom does, since she's not really talked about very often. However, I have seen her a lot in top 10 best Skylanders lists, and I can't understand how you could possibly compare her to the other 167 Skylanders and say that she is one of the 10 best, because she definitely has a really cool concept and really awesome design. A centaur that can of course rank up damage, but racking up damage isn't really all that useful because you can't get to 2 higher digits until your enemies are defeated anyways. And the main problem with Nightmare really is the fact that she's slow paced, her attacks barely even work. Like seriously, her Shadow Horn for me has maybe worked like once or twice. I can never seem to figure it out because the mechanics of the character are so jank, and on top of that her hitbox is so garbage. You can be hit by stuff that hits for very minimal pixel on the end of her horse's tail, which is so hard to avoid since she's so large and lacks in such huge maneuverability, making her very frustrating, and most certainly not one of the best Trapmasters, even though she is so rarely talked about, so that does make her a little less overrated than the others. But still, any praise going her way is praise undeserved in my eyes, unless it's talking about that magnificent design, because other than that, this character really does not have anything to offer, and I find her rather overrated. Put Nightmare at number 6 on the list right here. For number 5, we have the worst water Skylander from Spyro's Adventure. Anyone who disagrees with me is wrong, because that's how opinions work. But getting all of our classical phrases out of the way, when it comes to Slam Bam, I don't really find that much interesting about his moveset. He freezes enemies and then punches the ice prisoners. Big deal. It's incredibly slow paced. The animations are kind of generic, nothing we haven't seen out of other combo heavy characters. He's awfully slow paced as well, and the hitbox sucks just like Nightmare's. So when comparing him to the other water Skylanders of SSA, the other 3 are so much better, and yet Slam Bam to a lot of people is considered the best of the 4, and I can't possibly fathom why. Sure, he does have a pretty cool design, but unfortunately there aren't many contrasting colours to make him really stand out, and the 4 arms isn't all that unique in the context of Skylanders nowadays. Sure, it was definitely something unique at the time, but nowadays, now that we have characters like Philippede and Starcast, which are way cooler on a design standpoint, Slam Bam just doesn't stand out and have that same flair he used to, so I don't know why people still treat him as if he's better than all of these other characters, when, again, in my personal opinion, he's not. Coming in at number 4, we have Kaboom. I hate how low Kaboom's hitboxes is. I hate the fact that Kaboom has a Skylander design that stands out for all of the wrong reasons, because it's not cartoony enough, it doesn't fit in with the other Skylanders, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and I hate that about him. And on top of that, his moveset is just an amalgamation of other better characters. Like, seriously, he has kind of like the missile rain, like Bouncer does, and then he has the massive cannon and the charging attacks, like what Hothead possesses and all. So his attacks are very generic and really not all that fun to utilise. He's just a mash of the Y character, so why some people love him so much is beyond fathomability to me. I cannot believe it, I would go as far to say, simply because Kaboom is not as good as people make him out to be, with the generic moveset, the poor design, all combined into what makes, in my eyes, a pretty bad character, and yet people still love him regardless, making him one of the most overrated characters of the franchise, putting him at the easy number 4 spot on my list over here. Coming in at number 3 is Washbuckler, a character who is widely considered one of the best starter pack characters, and I can't possibly understand why. Again, he has a great design, and I most certainly can understand that, but when it comes down to the gameplay, he suffers from the same flaws other characters before him have. His moveset is generic, slow-paced, and to be frank, quite boring. Sure, his sword strikes are quite powerful, but when you have an attack that's so dull, why would you even want to use it, even if it has such power behind it? And his bubble gun even, you know, could create some very funny puns with, of course, the bubblegum food that you can eat in real life, but getting away from that entire tangent, a gun and a sword is not very unique swashbuckling style type weaponries, especially for a pirate where you could have so many more interesting attacks like stuff involving compasses and ghost ships. Oh wait, he does have that, which is why he's not number 1 on this list, because, you know, if it wasn't that ghost ship, that is definitely where a lot of the praise comes from this character, and you know what, I kinda get it. But everything else on the other hand, Washbuckler is not one of the best starter pack characters. Stop overhyping a character that is just average, and sometimes an average character that is perceived as a top 10 character is enough to get a number 3 on an overrated portion of the top 10 video, mind you. So that's where we are with Washbuckler, coming in at number 3 all the same. Oh boy, I cannot wait to hear the comment section in this one, because coming in at number 2 for me is Scratch. An incredible design. I love the fact that it's an expression of Egyptian culture, especially since I'm a huge fan of that culture. But when it comes down to moveset of Scratch, all people seem to bring up is the fact that, ooh, Muddy heals her. Big deal. There are several other better healing options than Skylanders. Just whip out another air character by the name of Whirlwind as your co-op character and heal up your Skylanders with ease. You don't need to worry about collecting money, you can just mash the Y button. And yet Scratch is the one getting all the love, despite her slow pace, how ineffective she is in combat, with the fact that her attacks are far too close range and don't deal nearly enough damage, and her hitbox is ridiculous. She has such a huge lack of maneuverability to where she's hit far too easily, and all of these things culminate to make it so that then she's defeated far too quickly, so being able to heal it with money becomes worthless because she's already dead, and therefore she's overrated, putting her at number 2 on my list right here. But boy, I am really asking for those pitchforks and you know, torches at this point. Speaking of torches, my number 1 most overrated Skylander in my eyes has to be none other than Hot Dog, which when talking about Fire Skylanders he is normally mentioned as one of the best, and that is just not a correct opinion to have, because that's just how opinions work, you know, they're basically facts, and the fact of the matter is that Hot Dog is not one of the best Fire Skylanders. He has a cute design, and that's about all that I can give him, because apart from that, he has a slam dunk based attack, he has a firewall, and he has a fireball. Very generic, uninspired fire based attacks, which are there to add to Hot Dog's cuteness rather than make him a beast to deal with in combat. So because of that, I don't find myself wanting to play Hot Dog all that much, just because outside of a cute personality and design, there's no reason to toggle about with the basic uninspired moveset. And so because of that, I hate how people overlook Hot Dog's flaws just for the sake of him being cute and rank him as one of the best Fire Skylanders, when there are so many better Fire Skylanders. I call it my favourite element for a reason, and that's because whilst even Hot Dog here is good, there's no denying it, I don't think he's as good as the other powerhouse characters of the element, so stop treating it as such. Putting Hot Dog here at number 1 on the list, and that's not going to change until people start to look at the character a lot more critically. But on the other end of the spectrum, I don't suppose you need to start doing that, because you are entitled to your opinion, and I'm going to respect it regardless. But now we get to move on to what I consider to be the most underrated characters in the franchise, or at least the ones that overly receive hate that they do not deserve. And that portion of the list is going to start off with Headrush. And what I really love about Headrush is her momentum. You can charge headfirst into battles and then drift, which has a really cool sound effect, and then keep pushing forward to just build and build up your damage. It's a really cool gameplay style, not to mention she deals so much damage. Sure, her hitboxes are ridiculous, so she's not really that effective in combat, so I can definitely see where a lot of the hate comes from, but still, calling her the worst Trackmaster is so undeserved, because believe me, people sleep on Headrush, and I can't possibly fathom why, considering that she is a lot better than several other garbage Trackmasters, including those that I mentioned in the overrated list. Like, seriously, stop giving praise to Kaboom when you have Headrush instead, who is a much better character in my eyes. Coming in at number 9 is Spyrise, a character overshadowed by her superior tech swap and Magna Charge, and so because of that, people don't really talk about this character unless they're memeing the heck out of the fact that Dr. Crankcase is his dad, and even then that's not really a trait that's expressing love for this character as an individual, because Spyrise is an absolute beast to be reckoned with. First of all, you can calculate your enemy's health with this, which makes strategizing a lot more fun. You can also jump into the air and rain down a massive laser, which is beast and so unique to this specific combination. And so his projectile attacks have really cool sound effects, and they really invest you heavily in the character, as he's so much fun to play around with and strategize with, and people seem to forget mentioning that whenever they talk about Spyrise, if they do so at all, because they're too busy talking about how much better Magna Charge is instead. And it's a shame such an awesome swapper was so overshadowed, putting Spyrise as one of my personal underrated Skylanders, since he deserves so much more love and praise than he receives. For the number 3 spot, I'm kind of cheating a little, because I'm combining my most underrated senseis all into the same slot, and they all have to be females too, because a lot of the female senseis were overlooked, including that of Barbella, Ember and Tidepool. Now Barbella is mostly overlooked because she has a weak design, that I can agree with, but people never seem to mention in conversation about Barbella how much fun her gameplay is. Her attacks flow together really nicely, and they're incredibly powerful, making her such a powerhouse to be reckoned with, and she is by far one of the most fun senseis for it. I love absolutely annihilating my enemies with more than just a single attack being spammed, because by utilizing your attacks in combination with one another, that's when Barbella is at her most effective. And then Ember is fun for all of the same reasons, and on top of that she has the epic samurai design, but unfortunately she's the worst of the fire senseis, which just like Spyrise automatically makes her overshadowed by Flare Wolf and Tycoon Crow, so people seem to kind of allow her to fade away into obscurity, which is not deserving, because she is such a fun, unique and flowful character to really add to the pace in her moveset, and on top of that her animations are also great. They're full of life and personality, so she's absolutely a sensei worth picking up and playing and appreciating. And you could say the exact same for Tidepool, who's probably not really talked about much unless your name is Judas, simply for the reason that she was one of the last senseis to come out, so not many people got her and she was significantly understocked everywhere. But there's still no denying that Tidepool has great crowd control. She can spin with her little ink bullets and deal with enemies from all quarters. It's a really unique gameplay style that's fluent and really fun to take advantage of. Her design is incredible on top of it, and she is so overlooked. She is so good. Deserves so much praise. I can see where Judas is coming from, and that gets her tied 8th on the list alongside Barbella and Ember right here. For number 7, I have Zap. a Skylander which, even without the unique context behind him, because of course with Zap he was the fan favourite of a young boy of cancer unfortunately, and he passed away during the Giants era, so the developers honoured his memory by naming Zap Series 2 WAP after him, and that is just such a heartwarming story to me, the fact that the memory of this child can be can live on even through his favourite character. And within the Spyro's Adventure context, Zap is an epic character that people tend to forget about because he has such speed and fluency in his moves. He can create a seaside slide and then easily electrify it, and not to mention that's maneuverable as you can easily angle it and everything. And he's got some great projectile attacks that are powerful too, so he can keep his distance and be basically a really effective character. And his speech is rather bubbly, as if, you know, he's speaking as though he's underwater, despite the fact that he's on ground, and it even has his water tanks to breathe on the ground. And so it's just a really thought-provoking design with some really great personality that's so overlooked by people, because when comparing him to the rest of the water element Skylanders, going back to Slam Bam from the previous list, people often say Slam Bam is much better than this character, which is just wrong on so many levels. He's so much fun, he's so overlooked, and I wish people would take a closer look at him and appreciate him, A, for being a great character in and of himself, and B, for being a character that stands for something really special within the Skylanders franchise, that honouring of a young child. For number 6, I have another water Skylander, which is Chill. So many water Skylanders are underrated, and I can't possibly fathom why, since Chill here is a Skylander which I've heard no end of hate towards, despite the fact that her projectile attacks are really powerful and really great at keeping her distance, so therefore she has a lot of really great effects. She's like Slam Bam but better, since she can create ice walls that can entrap enemies and keep them at a distance as you, of course. Multiply your ice javelins through them, and on top of that she also has a shield that can block attacks, knock back enemies, so you have a better shot with your projectile attacks, and overall it just makes Chill really fun and really overlooked amongst the rest of the Giants cast, and that's quite unfortunate, so therefore I'm putting her at number 6 on my list right here. I couldn't care less whether people dislike her distastefully, and I say distastefully because she does not deserve such distaste with how incredible her moveset is, and I am hoping that this list can draw the light towards how awesome this character is in actuality, at least in my personal opinion. Again, as I said earlier, you're definitely entitled to yours and I respect it, so long as you respect mine. Number 5 is the character that seems to get the most hate from Giants, and I don't know why. It's the on-running theme right here. When it comes to my commentary, since number 5 is going to be Fright Rider, a Skylander which people blindly hate on, despite the fact that his design is incredible. He's a elf on an undead ostrich. Just let that sink in. Even without the gameplay that you see before you, the concept of that design alone is incredible, and the gameplay has a lot of variation in terms of its power, its speed. He's the ultimate balanced character with some really fluent animations, especially when it comes to his combinations that are really fun to pull off, since they have just such sheer power to them and great sound effects to again really hook you in with the character thanks to the realism behind it all. So overall, Fright Rider is absolutely one of the most hated Skylanders in my personal opinion, who doesn't deserve any of it because he's so much fun, he's so fast-paced, he's so powerful, and people just seem to overlook him because, sure, in comparison to all of the Giants' cores, he's not as good, but that doesn't mean he deserves the hate all the same. Putting him at number 5 on my personal list right here. Coming in at number 4 is Zulu, a character which a lot of people put on their worst Skylanders lists, and I don't know why, because he has such great ranged attacks, his attacks have great variety in them, and I love the sound effects and the animations of all of his unique animal creatures. And so on top of that, he's got really great personality too, with his accent and his care for animals really fitting in with his element. So he's a really thought-provoking character, and his gameplay is just spliced with that variety to keep him fresh and fun as you're playing with him. No two Zulu interactions feel the same because he just creates such a fresh taste whenever you play as him. So where does all of this hate come from? He's powerful, he's effective in combat, he's fun, most importantly of all. So I really like this character, and I think he is incredibly underrated and even overhated, you could go as far as saying. Number 3 is Batspin, a character who seems to be overlooked by the other 2 free-to-play Skylanders, despite the fact that she is better than them both. Sure, she easily has the weakest design and weakest name of the 3, but that doesn't come at the denial of how incredible her moveset is. Her projectile attacks and how they flow into her bat circular motions is really fluent and fast paced, making her incredibly effective as you can keep your distance, heal yourself up if you need to, thanks to her healing based abilities, and on top of that she has a really great personality, and her animations are really smooth and fun to watch. So she is by far the most fun of the free-to-play Skylanders, and that's the most important thing whenever you buy a Skylander. You want them to be fun, and Batspin nails that. So the fact that she's so overlooked, and to some degree even hated in comparison to the other 2 free-to-play Skylanders, all because her name and her design is the weakest, is so upsetting to me, and she deserves better, which is why I've put her at number 3 on the list right here. Number 2 is a character which Crash hates, so now all of a sudden the entirety of the internet even has suddenly and inexplicably turned on Ninjini, all because Crash the Skylanders doesn't seem to like her because he can't play her. By utilising combinations, Ninjini's attacks aren't as slow as they might seem. Sure, she definitely gets that huge buff and trap team to make her even better, but from the get-go, Ninjini is incredible. She's well paced, you know. If you don't want to use her swords, then don't use them. Go into a bottle where she's more manoeuvrable. She's hit far less thanks to the smaller hitbox. And her transforming animations are so smooth and fun to watch, and that's of course coupled with the fact that she's very colourful and visually dazzling, you could go as far to say. And again, her wish blades have a lot of range because the swords are really long and really packing a punch, so to say. They are full with damage. They deal so much damage that I'm kind of glad that she can be slow if you don't know how to utilise her combinations, because that balances her out a whole lot better. So naturally, don't judge Ninja and other people's opinions, and form your own opinion on this character, because who knows, you might even grow to like her in the same vein I do, because she is so overhated. She is far from the worst giant. She is amongst the very middle of the cast for me, because she still has that fun, maneuverability and charm to her that some of the other giants lack, especially when it comes to colour, and that's what puts Ninjini at number 2 on my list, since she's easily the most hated giant for no reason whatsoever. But when I came up with the idea of an underrated list, I knew immediately who my number 1 was going to be. This is a Skylander which so many people sleep on. He is hated by almost the entirety of the internet. I'm willing to say that about 80% of the people who I've asked about their opinion on Prison Break have turned around and said he sucks. Well, I'm here to tell you that that opinion is wrong, because as always, that's how these opinions work. Since Prison Break is incredible, for the 20% of us who do seem to love him, we love him with good reason. Sure, his design isn't the greatest, it's lackluster for the same reason as Barbella's really. He's a rock golem, big deal. But his gameplay, on the other hand, it ingests strategy and math and logic unlike any other Skylander, because you need to situate his crystals in a way that makes his refraction more effective so you can hit more enemies. So the more clever you are about this style, the more rewarding it is to play as Prison Break. You feel smart playing as this character for thinking whilst you're playing as him, and because you have to think logically, that concentration immerses you further in the character. I don't like his slow walking speed, but really that's such a minor nitpick in a character that, you know, people hate for that one singular nitpick, despite the fact that his beams are really powerful. They lock on too, which can be frustrating, but only sometimes. And again, that's merely a nitpick, not worth hating the entirety of the character for. People who dislike this character clearly just aren't good at math, because if you can use angles and reward yourself for your logic with this character, and it becomes so fun and satisfying, especially when you take that Series 2 character, you refract your crystals dozens of times, and then you deal over 300 damage to just about every enemy in your vicinity. So they have no chance of getting anywhere near you thanks to how broken that wow power is. It got my number 1 wow power on my top 10 Skylanders wow power abilities with good reason. Prison Break is such a force to be reckoned with. People seem to forget that and just don't want to play with this character because, oh my gosh, he walks so slow. So yes, that is what makes Prison Break, in my personal opinion, number 1 most overhated Skylander, and I for one find him really underrated, and I think he definitely deserves a shot in the spotlight. I mean, like, he's the main reason that light cores even exist, for Pete's sake. He was a perfect design for a light core, so clearly Toy Bob thought to themselves, what if his crystals lit up? And because of that idea, light cores exist. We have Prison Break to thank for that. He is even the poster boy for the light core Skylanders. If that doesn't deserve some love, I don't know what does. But with that being said and done, these lists are coming to an end. I hope I have maybe changed your opinion on some of these characters, or maybe not. You know, you shouldn't change your opinion based on other people's opinions, is basically what I said in the intro, and I'm going to stick to that. But hey, maybe you can look back at a character perhaps you overlooked, and maybe that has inspired you to play as them and give them a second chance. And if your opinion remains the same, I cannot stress enough that is absolutely fine. We're all entitled to these opinions. But enough of me hammering this message down your throat. I'm going to end off this video here. So thank you guys so much as always for watching. We are going to be taking a break from top 10s for a week or so odd, so I can focus purely on the 12 days of Smash Us. But until the next top 10 arises, peace.